morning. I will now call the June 9th, 2021 regular meeting to order. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that 3 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony by phone during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson.
Here.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer. And I see her in the Zoom. Looks like we're having I just got an error message about promoting her. Supervisor Desmond.
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher.
See, I'm here. I don't know.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll now proceed with our proclamations. Our first proclamation will be presented by Supervisor Lawson-Remer honoring Harry Crosby. And if we have worked out our technical issues with Supervisor Lawson-Remer, I will turn it over to her.
Thank you very much. We should actually have a video of Harry. So I'm not sure if that video is queued up.
We are ready when you are.
Go ahead.
You are a San Diego legend. We've all grown up as a La Joyan. I've grown up hearing about you, reading your books. You are a true asset to your community, and we are so proud to be presenting this to you on what will now forever on June 10th, 2021 be Harry Crosby Day in the County of San Diego. This is for your 95th birthday. It is a proclamation of Harry Crosby Day in honor of all your contributions to your community, to San Diego, to the history of San Diego and Baja California. It's an honor to present this proclamation.
Well, oh, grab it?
Yeah.
So I think that says it all. It's just a real honor to present this proclamation to Harry Crosby in honor of his 95th birthday. He is truly a living legend in our community with his adventures to Baja, the books he's written, and the contributions he's made to making San Diego the place that it is. So happy birthday, Harry, and just really an honor to honor you today.
Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, and happy birthday, Harry. Next on the agenda is non-agendized public communication opportunity for the public to address the board on subject matters within our jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. A reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public that are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will get twice the allotted time to allow for translation. I'll ask the clerk at this time to call forward our non-agendized public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 7 requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. Any members of the public that have requested to speak during non-agenda public communication will call you forward by name. For those that requested to speak via phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the individual that requested to speak in person. I'd like to invite forward Alex Pellegrino. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before our distinguished board. My name is Alex Pellegrino. I am a San Diego native. I've been conducting business for decades. My family has. My father, Nick Pellegrino, co-founded a company here called FedMart. Some of you may remember FedMart. Maybe you don't, I don't know. His partner then changed the name to Price Club and moved forward from there. I come here because I have 2 questions, and this is regarding my children and COVID. I need to know these by the end of the summer. Are you guys going to make children wear masks in school next year? That's question 1. I don't know who to address this question to, so I'm bringing it to you guys. And question 2, are we going to make vaccines mandatory for children in order to go to school next year? My family and I have already had COVID, and my children are recovered, and they recovered in hours and not days, which was something we anticipated, for all the science and data has shown that kids hardly get sick, rarely die, and are not spreaders of the virus. This has been an ongoing issue for my family and I because we've watched countries around the world, specifically all Scandinavian countries and most of Europe, open for over a year while schools in the UK haven't required masks for children under 12. Members of the board, I have 3 children under the age of 12, and my wife and I have decided that we will not go through another year of education like the last one, nor will we allow them to take a vaccine for a virus that they already have antibodies for. We are native San Diegans, San Diego natives who voted for you, Mr. Fletcher, of all people, and we are preparing to move from our city, our state, and our home because of this. San Diegans, like me, excuse me, we need these questions answered. It's the humane thing to do. We have one chance to move, and it's this summer. So if you would, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You'll then need to press *6 to unmute your line. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the record, and again, you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And if you could please identify the first caller.
Our first speaker is 2899. 2899, please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, I'm Mary Davis from Alpine. Today I'm speaking about 3 interconnected issues. Point number 1, to draw attention to and ask for accountability for what transpired at yesterday's Board of Supervisors meeting regarding agenda item number 2. It was a COVID reporting segment where you allowed your representatives time for their presentation, but then called an abrupt adjournment and told the community members who wanted to speak on that item to come back in 2.5 hours. That delay was inherently unfair to those who took the time to drive down there or called in to speak. I am asking you to go on record to advise us why and for what issue the adjournment was called, when did you know about it, and why was it not put on the agenda so that all could be aware of it beforehand. Point number 2, since equity is a paramount tenet of this board, I am asking that you develop a formal tracking and rotational method for any future adjournment so the same group does not get marginalized the way it did yesterday. I do not think that you would have done that to the renters' rights group, the immigration rights group, or the SEI members, and yet you deemed it acceptable to do it to a group that has frequently and openly opposed your actions and draconian and harmful response to COVID. Point number 3, for over a year, the county has tracked data regarding COVID, but to date, no consistent documentation or presentations are routinely made about the collateral damage from your response policies. I am asking Dr. Wooten and the OES to create a dashboard specific to what I call the COVID response collateral damage, where overdoses, suicides, mental health calls for service, nursing home and hospital deaths, bankruptcies, business closings, et cetera, are cumulatively tracked, and then to incorporate that data into the monthly COVID presentation. This would give a far clearer picture of the true societal cost of the harm done by your decisions for which you are never held accountable. Reopen San Diego now. Our rights are inalienable. Your political power plays are not.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2352. 2352, please press *6 to unmute. 2352.
Hello, this is Craig Logan. And unfortunately, my work will keep me away from commenting on item 2 later today because one of its issues is CEQA, and I'm an attendee of the Borrego Springs County Planning Group. I must share this concern. Borrego Springs is home to the Anza Borrego State Park, which we value as the largest desert state park in the nation, 640,000 acres. Borrego Springs is one of the largest protected areas in the West and the county's only self-sufficient desert community. The idea of bringing marijuana operations to Borrego is environmentally and economically flawed. Growers use intense and extensive artificial lighting, useful for growing plants, but detrimental to human health, disruptive to wildlife, migratory species, and compromising to Borrego's International Dark Skies certification. Plus, Borrego's the sole source of water is groundwater. Cultivation, one of marijuana businesses contemplated by the proposed ordinance, will be a huge drain on this groundwater, threaten and compromise the park's delicate ecosystem. Anza Borrego Desert and the people who work to protect its unique and fragile ecosystem should be protected and respected, not exploited by marijuana storefronts and other business activities that could irreparably harm the community, character, and the environment. It would never be worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2965. 2965, please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is KB Strange, and I'm calling today from work where I've been employed in the medical field for over 40 years. I have argued against marijuana sales and cultivation in San Diego County because neighborhoods don't improve with more marijuana businesses in them, just like neighborhoods do not improve with more liquor stores or head shops or smoke shops. What our neighborhoods do need are pocket parks and playgrounds, paved and well-lit streets and regular trash pickup, and stores that sell healthy foods. I want you to know that our minority patients that we work with have no interest in marijuana businesses in their towns, and I'm surprised that the county would be on such a rush to push marijuana businesses. Are there backroom pressures going on here? You should know that marijuana industry is dominated by big corporations, including the tobacco company Altria, read that R.J. Reynolds, who already spend multi-millions to keep menthol cigarettes on the market because their market research shows that minority smokers will purchase menthol cigarettes. And of course, marijuana market research shows young people to be the target audience. I'm guessing that the board knows that marijuana is mostly smoked or vaped, and that you understand that the health and financial impact that smoking and vaping have for people, including shortened lifespan, serious chronic health problems, as well as the financial burden of addiction. So why the rush? I think there are far more questions than answers in item 2 staff report. Please postpone decision-making until you research and speak to those who would be impacted by marijuana businesses. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7159. 7159, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Mark Wilcox. Last week, the law enforcement community and public received a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District of California, regarding the unlawful dumping in El Cajon of 55-gallon drums of waste ethanol from a San Diego permitted marijuana manufacturing facility. Waste ethanol is the leftover from extracting oils from marijuana plants, and it exhibits high ignitability. This dump was discovered by citizens and the employees of the businesses where the dumps occurred. This is an example of the abuse by marijuana businesses, permittees, who are large quantity generators of hazardous waste. In checking with the California Bureau of Cannabis Control, I found there was no oversight of marijuana regarding meeting the conditions of their permits, and the state's CEQA review system had been dismantled, so the damage done to our environment has no mitigation. In checking with the city of San Diego, I was told that they do not use proactive investigations, but react retrospectively, even though they have a cannabis department funded at the cost of $1 million a year. So how much does oversight and enforcement cost? Lots more than San Diego or California has, apparently. As you look at marijuana business in the unincorporated areas of the county in item 2 today, the county needs a thorough and truthful loss-benefit cost analysis. Pervasive oversight, aggressive enforcement, and comprehensive CEQA review cost more than could ever be estimated. Is it worth it? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9498. 9498, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Julia Weinstein. As far as yesterday, I was listening a little bit in the morning, and I had scheduled my appointment so that I could listen in and just listen in. And I just would like to ask, just it's a maturity, respect thing. I just think that the board should be respectful of people calling in, keeping to your own timeline of your meeting, and just basically keeping to your timeline, especially since the taxpayers are your boss, and maybe people have scheduled their schedules around that. I know of a couple people who wanted to call in about 2 or 3 of your different items later on, and they just couldn't because they needed to get going home to their kids. The second thing I want to mention is I don't know if you guys have any oversight over Caltrans, and I drive multiple freeways in the county, and I'm really getting tired of seeing the trash, weeds, debris. I've seen Conservation Corps. I've seen this group 5Ts cleaning up the freeways. This is Caltrans' job. That's what our taxes go to. I don't know if they're taking a cut when they sub the job out to Conservation Corps or 5Ts, but that's not okay. And I'm also wondering, why are they closing requests for all this trash, debris, and weeds on the freeways when the job wasn't even done? So then, I personally have had to put the same order back in, and I just copy and paste the old request number. It feels like San Diego freeways are starting to look like a slum, and why are we allowing that? The third thing I wanted to mention is just on your link on the, I think it's the call and comments, step 2, that watch or listen link is not working. So whomever's in charge of your platform needs to maybe go and check to make sure the links are all working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. That concludes requests under non-agenda public communication this morning.
Thank you. We'll now go to our closed session report. I'll ask County Council to report out any actions from yesterday.
Thank you. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session starting at 12:01 p.m. and adjourning at 1 p.m. The board took the following reportable actions. Item 24A, Sarah Dees et al., v. County of San Diego. With all 5 board members voting aye, authorize County Council to settle this lawsuit involving an interview of a minor child that was conducted as part of a child abuse investigation for $200,000. Item 24C, Antoine Beeler v. San Diego County District Attorney et al. With 5 board members voting aye, authorize County Council to settle this California Public Records Act lawsuit for $50,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the board meeting minute statement of proceedings for Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll proceed with the formation of the consent calendar. I'll ask the clerk if there's any items the public wishes pulled for discussion.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Item 2 has been pulled by the public. Item 3 may remain on consent. It has not been pulled by the public, but does require some direction from the board on options for funding for that project. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda may be placed in the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
All right, I'll now go to my colleague, Supervisor Anderson. We'll start with you.
I'd like to pull item 8.
All right. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Oh, I'm shaking my head, but you couldn't hear me. Nothing to pull.
I can't see you.
You can't see me, you can't hear me, but I'm here. Nothing to pull.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to give direction on item 3. This is on the traffic signal at the intersection of Oleander and Poinsettia in North County. This is next to the 62 unit housing project that we approved, and the traffic signal is right at the entrance to a elementary school. So I'd like to make for recommendation number 4 on item 3, I'd like to propose that we fund the traffic signal with the general fund balance. So, and I'll move to approve the, with that recommendation, the consent agenda, except for those who pulled.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vargas.
Nothing to pull. Just wanted to say thank you on item number 11. This is an item that's going to be really helpful for the communities of Sweetwater. And it is identified in the draft EJ element of the county. This is an investment, I think, that's going to continue to open access to recreation and open spaces opportunities for our community. So I'm excited to see it. So happy to support it.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by myself, to adopt the consent calendar, consent agenda. Have the clerk confirm that we will be discussing items 2 and 8, and on item 3, we will be adopting recommendation 4. After we confirm that, we'll call the roll.
That is correct. Thank you, Chair Fletcher. With that, Supervisor Anderson.
Hold on, sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, we're going to take up agenda item 2. This is the 90-day return and update, input and opportunity for some board feedback and direction surrounding economic access and equity in the cannabis industry. I would ask members of the public who wish to speak on this item to please call in at this time. We're going to go first to our staff presentation. Then we will hear from members of the public, and after that, we will go to board deliberation discussion. So with that, I will turn it over to county staff.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and Supervisors. I'm Rami Telly with Planning and Development Services, and I'm joined by Vince Nicoletti. Today, we're presenting a progress report on the county's socially equitable cannabis program. In January of this year, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to develop a socially equitable program led by the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and a commercial cannabis licensing program led by Planning and Development Services to enable a full spectrum of cannabis businesses, including cultivation, distribution, testing, retail, manufacturing, and micro businesses. In March, the board directed staff to analyze different options for the county to comply with the state's environmental review requirements and facilitate the 5 existing dispensaries' ongoing operations. As we'll discuss in this presentation, staff's conclusion is that the more environmental review the county conducts up front, the lower the permitting requirements will be for future businesses. Lastly, in May, the board authorized acceptance of $75,000 in grant funding for the social equity program. This grant award will support the county in hiring a consultant to conduct a comprehensive assessment of the impacts that the historic criminalization of cannabis has had on local communities in San Diego County. To date, the Office of Equity and Racial Justice has held several public input sessions and reached out to other jurisdictions with social equity programs to inform their consultant selection process. The California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, requires that impacts to the environment be evaluated before the county can adopt a new program. Depending on the complexity and scope of the program, there are several levels of environmental review the county could undertake. The 3 main levels of review are a negative declaration, a mitigated negative declaration, and a program environmental impact report. Each are applicable depending on the level of impacts an anticipated action would have on the environment. As the level of impacts increase, so does the amount and duration of environmental review. A negative declaration, or ND, can be used when a proposed program poses no environmental impacts. For this option to apply, the scope of the county's program needs to be scaled back to ensure there are no potential impacts to the environment. This would limit future business activities to indoor cultivation, distribution, and testing of cannabis products. If the board supports limiting the scope of uses, then the county could develop and adopt the program in approximately 10 months at no additional cost. This will lead to the narrowest program scope of all the options. Additionally, if we use an ND and limit future business activities, individual applicants will have to conduct their own environmental review when establishing their businesses, which can be expensive and time-consuming. This would result in higher permitting costs and create entry barriers for future applicants. Lastly, an ND has a low threshold for CEQA challenges. If a challenger can show that some portion of the program may have an impact on the environment, the program would be voided. The Mitigated Negative Declaration, or MND, is used for actions that pose minor impacts to the environment, which can be reduced through mitigation measures. This allows for a broader program scope, including indoor and outdoor cultivation, distribution, and testing. An MND and program adoption would take approximately 14 months with no additional costs to the county. The MND would also require future environmental review for most uses and has a low threshold to CEQA challenges. A programmatic environmental impact report, or PEIR, would include the broadest program scope consisting of cultivation, manufacturing, testing, distribution, retail, and micro businesses. Additionally, PEIRs have a higher threshold for CEQA challenges because the challenger must show the county reached its conclusion without evidence. The PEIR option would not include additional costs to the county and would result in the least amount of environmental review and least expensive permitting process for future applicants. The PEIR process would take approximately 2 years to complete. This timeframe enables the social equity program to launch ahead of the commercial license applications being received. This lead time could be used to assist social equity applicants with business planning and regulatory training before the county opens the commercial cannabis marketplace. Staff believes the pros of the standard 2-year PEIR significantly outweighs its cons, and therefore recommends this be the program's CEQA approach. The agricultural community has asked the county if the normal 2-year PEIR process can be expedited. We believe it could be shortened to approximately 18 months by hiring additional consultants. This requires an additional $320,000. A fast-track timeframe would reduce the social equity program's lead time and reduce opportunities for public engagement and collaboration. Given the potential impacts to the social equity program and less transparency, staff does not recommend fast-tracking the PEIR. Another option the agricultural community has requested staff to review is to rely on a PEIR focused on cultivation certified by the California Department of Food and Agriculture, or CDFA. The CDFA's PEIR covers about half of the environmental review topics considered through CEQA. We believe we can consider the remaining CEQA topics using a mitigated negative declaration that will take 14 months and be adopted 1 year ahead of the remaining retail, manufacturing, and distribution uses. This approach would cost the county an additional $195,000 because staff would be developing multiple CEQA documents, an MND for cultivation, and a PIR for the remaining uses. This approach would narrow the scope of cultivation and could be subject to the same low threshold to CEQA challenges as discussed for negative declarations. For these reasons, staff does not recommend this approach. In summary, staff recommends the 2-year PIR as a CEQA approach because it covers the full spectrum of commercial cannabis uses and allows for the lowest permitting levels for future applicants. This time frame also provides the greatest opportunity for stakeholder outreach and aligns with the timeline to develop the social equity program.
Now we will present the different permit process levels for future applicants. The board directed staff to consider several types of permits offered by the City of San Diego, which adopted a commercial cannabis program in 2017. For their environmental review, the city relied on a statewide exemption for cannabis, along with requirements for discretionary permits. The board considered use of this exemption on March 3rd and decided not to rely on it due to the permitting requirements that are placed on future applicants, as well as impacts to social equity applicants. Both the city and county offer ministerial permits, such as building permits. They are preferred by applicants because their approval is based upon meeting the code. If an applicant meets all requirements of the code, they will receive a permit. Ministerial permits are the least expensive of permit types available and take the least amount of time to process. The city also has a permit that requires a little more discretion, a neighborhood use permit, which is similar to the county's administrative permit. These differ from ministerial permits because they involve staff review and consideration of the impacts surrounding a community on a project-specific basis. Neither require a public hearing, but it can be appealed to the respective planning commissions. The city's high-level discretionary permit is the Conditional Use Permit, which is similar to the county's major use permit. Both involve approval at a public hearing and are appealable to the highest respective bodies, City Council or the Board of Supervisors. The board's decision today on an environmental review option will impact the types of permits the county is able to offer future applicants. To understand the implications that different environmental reviews will have on future applicants, staff has estimated the permitting levels under a variety of scenarios. 3 factors must be considered when estimating future permit levels: what the activity will be, where the activity will be done, and the level of environmental review conducted by the county. Since the negative declaration and mitigated negative declaration do not involve the most robust environmental review and cannot rely on a statement of overriding considerations, staff estimates some of the uses will not be part of the county's program. For complex situations that require additional consideration on a project-per-project basis, the county would require either a major use permit or administrative permit. Lastly, where future impacts can be identified, analyzed, and mitigated through a checklist process, the county would require a ministerial permit. The more environmental review the county does on the entire program, the more business opportunities will be available, the easier the environmental reviews will be for future individual applicants, and the faster and cheaper their permits would be. Under a PEIR, staff believes a ministerial permit can be used for retail because the county would already analyze the impacts of a typical facility in a compatible zone. For example, the county could analyze a 2,500 square foot retail facility in a general commercial zone and standardize mitigation measures for future applicants. Anyone proposing a similar or smaller business would only need the ministerial permit. This approach of streamlining future reviews is known as tiering. Another example is micro businesses. Under a PEIR, staff believes that an administrative permit could be used for micro businesses. A micro business is a one-stop shop where a single business can grow, manufacture, distribute, and sell cannabis products. This multi-use business does not fit neatly into any one particular zone, and so the impacts of the surrounding community must be analyzed. Therefore, future applicants that propose micro businesses would need to prepare an analysis of site-specific impacts. Under the PEIR, all cannabis uses could be allowed, leading to a broad program with robust business opportunities. The PEIR will reduce the environmental review for future applicants that they must undertake to enable more permits to be processed ministerially. This reduces barriers for entry for future applicants, supporting social equity. Now we'll present options to continue the operations of the 5 existing dispensaries. The county currently has 5 existing cannabis collective permit holders. As collectives, they must operate not-for-profit and may only sell cannabis to members of the collective with medical cards. The county's current regulations prohibit them from selling edibles, preclude building permits for expansion or alterations, and order the existing permit holders to cease operations by April 2022. Eliminating the sunset date is critical to allow the existing dispensaries to continue their operations. Amending the existing ordinance to remove the sunset date and time can be done using a general CEQA exemption. An action is exempt from CEQA if it will not have an impact on the environment, which is true for allowing the existing dispensaries to continue operating. If directed, staff will present this zoning ordinance amendment to the Planning Commission in August for consideration and return to the board in October for adoption and initial reading. In working with representatives from the existing dispensaries, staff identified additional opportunities to help them sustain their operations, including potential changes to their business operations. However, since the ordinance amendments will be adopted under a general CEQA exemption, the county is limited to changes that pose no significant impacts to the environment. The county could allow existing dispensaries to begin selling edible products, to begin selling branded merchandise, obtain building permits with expansions up to 10%, and apply for discretionary permits, such as an admin permit, to expand beyond 10%. The county could also allow the existing dispensaries to become for-profit medical businesses, which would reduce their administrative burdens of ensuring products are only bought and sold of other members of their collective, and bought and sold from other members of the collective. Additionally, the county could allow the existing dispensaries to apply for a discretionary permit, such as an admin permit, to transition to adult use sales, which would allow the dispensaries to sell cannabis to anyone over 21, regardless of medical prescription. In conclusion, staff recommends the board find today's actions are exempt from CEQA, direct staff to proceed with a single PEIR over a standard 2-year timeframe that allows for all potential commercial cannabis uses, and direct staff to return in October with an update and ordinance revisions for the existing dispensaries. This concludes the presentation. We're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to our public speakers on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 33 requests to speak on this item, 6 in person and 27 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 14 e-comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 2, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. We will begin with the in-person speakers. I'll be calling forward, we'll begin with a group presentation that is in support of the item. So I'd like to invite forward Rennie Bowden, Greg McCluskey, Lincoln Fish, and Cynthia Morgan Reed. The group will have 10 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please self-regulate your time using the timer on the podium. And I'll ask each speaker to state their name for the audio record during the presentation.
Thank you. My name is Rennie Bowden, and thank you first to Chairman Fletcher and Honorable Board of Supervisors. We are all small business owners. Contrary to what you've heard from others, I'm not Philip Morris. We are just small business owners. We have opened up these small businesses legally using a set of rules provided by the County of San Diego. These rules and guidelines that were further expanded and strengthened by the California voters and the San Diego voters. The first set of rules were very restrictive, but understandably because of the nature of a new industry. We were pushed to the most restrictive industrial areas to mitigate any unforeseen impact. It's important to note that we have had only positive impact on our communities, no negative impacts whatsoever, and this can be verified by not only the San Diego Sheriff's Department, but also by our community planning groups. We have forged a very strong and open line of communication with the Ramona Planning Committee, and I'm sure they'd be happy to report that we have had no negative impact in their eyes, only positive to their community. 4 years ago, the County Supervisors, contrary to public vote and will, decided to reverse the set of rules and ban our businesses. But we were given the right and the opportunity to prove our vested rights by documenting every dime with receipts that on the money that we have spent to conform with these rules. I documented close to $400,000, which included widening the roads in front of my business, adding a sidewalk, which is the only one on my block whatsoever. I had to move a power pole by about 3 feet in order to accommodate this sidewalk. That was a $90,000 cost because only SDG&E can do that work for me. We added the only street light within 10 blocks of our business. I added bars to my windows because the Sheriff's Department said that they needed to be added. Then I went ahead and removed them because the fire department came in and said that they were illegal and could not be there. So we were all learning together, and this is understandable because this was a new industry. I purchased a 2.77 acre piece of property with a 1,900 square foot building on it because we were told that we needed to be seed to sale to fit within inside this ordinance. We were also told that we needed to open up our retail locations before we could actually start the cultivations. 5 of the properties were deemed vested, which are represented by the owners here today, but there were about 4 or 5 other permits that were not vested. They weren't far enough along. They didn't spend enough thousands of dollars in order to be vested. Many of us had tens of thousands of dollars towards our cultivation and manufacturing permits that were deemed not far enough along, so those were just thrown aside. That was just wasted money. We've operated under the old and outdated set of rules that are not consistent with and contrary to California rules and regulations, and this has put us into an inferior position. All of our legitimate San Diego businesses that surround us, that are much closer to us here actually as we stand than the ones out in the county, are all operating in conjunction with these California rules and regulations. This has led to a very prolific black market out in the county, and it still is a huge problem these days. The sheriffs definitely need help and more funds to go ahead and fight this. And with the opening up of our businesses and actually letting them conform with the California rules, we will now be able to provide to the community the products that they need in order to shut down this black market. We're just asking to operate underneath these new rules and be granted the rights that we had originally when we first got into this business. Finally, during this process, we have had the pleasure to meet and work with this new group that is taking the lead with the social equity component. We are very, very supportive of what they're doing, the work that they're doing. One of their big initiatives is they want to take some of the tax revenue and actually educate and elevate the communities that have most been impacted by the war on drugs. We have also determined that the best possible way that we can support them in this new social equity drive is by providing education and internships to these people that want to get into this industry. We are actually working within this industry. But the only way that we could possibly do that is if we actually have these businesses to educate them. I can't teach them cultivation on paper. It doesn't make much sense. So in short, we very much support what they're doing. We want to be able to support them. Please give us our rights back so that we can expand our businesses and support and train the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. Thank you.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Lincoln Fish. I'm the CEO of Outco. We run 2 of the 5 operations in the county. I will keep this short. I'm thrilled to be here today. I love what the Board of Supervisors is doing here. There's a whole new culture happening that seems to be getting rid of the old line culture of no that we've seen from county supervisors and staff. I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with this, with the recommendations here on 4A and 4B. But with 4C and 4D, we do have some, we would like to see you add a little bit to that. Staff is proposing a 10% restriction for expansion. My operation is the largest in the county, and for me, that means I can probably add a couple of restrooms and maybe a nice waiting area for those restrooms. I can't, that leaves 6,500 square feet of a building that I can't use for cannabis operations, even though the whole building is licensed. We're not asking for a lot here. It's a 10,000 square foot expansion. That kind of falls in with the adult use thing. In both cases, they're talking about the environmental impact. Honestly, because of the rules in the county, we're so remote already that the only way that adult use could create an environmental impact is if we gave away free weed curbside. You know, yeah, then we'd have a traffic backup. But that's about it. I mean, seriously, we're very separated, and that's the only argument that we can possibly see. There are only 5 of us here. We're huge supporters of the new ordinance and the social equity program. We want to contribute to that process. But in the meantime, please don't continue to penalize us because the Board of Supervisors gave us permission a long time ago and then came back shortly afterwards and said, oh, just kidding. You know, that's really what's happened here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Greg McCluskey. I am owner of Ramona Cannabis Company. I like to start and point out that I have 8 children. I hear that often in the cannabis case, how many people, how many children they have. And my whole family, my wife and I, my children support this progress forward. And the reason we support this is my 81-year-old Mormon mother got cancer twice in the last 3 years. And the doctor recommended cannabis to her because she's allergic to opioids and she cannot sleep. She took cannabis for the first time in her life. It's a miracle drug for her. It changed her life. The problem with some of the County Board of Supervisor rules that I see, and I thank the County Board of Supervisors for the changes, but the problems I see is if she lived in Ramona and she doesn't, she would have to drive to Miramar to get an edible because she does not smoke. Or she would have to have a company an hour away deliver an edible to her home. And this is not environmentally sound to have our aging community, those who are impacted the most, to be driving up and down the canyons when they could be getting it locally 5 minutes from their home, or a delivery driver could be driving it 5 minutes to their home. I ask that we help the local businesses to get these products for the people who need them most. I'm a cannabis hypocrite. 5 years ago, I was against cannabis. But cannabis has changed my life, and it's changed others' lives around me for the good. And in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, most people, if not everyone, themselves or someone they love is going to need cannabis. And we need to be in the path of progress. And 18 months and 2 years is too long for someone who's 81 years old. That's 25, 50%, 75% of the rest of their life. I would like to get those products to them now. If you go to the next slide, you will see these are our dispensaries. Go to the next slide. These are the illegal dispensaries, not showing the one in Lakeside or Valley Center. Go to the next slide. Those are all the other dispensaries people can travel to from where we live and work. I would ask that we change this. An hour away or an illegal black market, non-licensed, non-tested cannabis product should not be an alternative for those who can't get there. So I appreciate your time and thank you.
Hi, Cynthia Morgan-Reed, Advanced Law Land Use Attorney. I've identified the CEQA issues here, and I can tell you with much assurances that if you decide to adopt a CEQA exemption for this process for the 5 existing cannabis operators, you will be in good stead. In our letter that we've submitted to you by Blue Water, it shows that there are 13 jurisdictions around the states that have used exemptions. Please adopt the exemption of existing facilities, which would allow 10,000 square foot additional square footage. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite forward the individual speakers in favor of this item, Jim Whalen and Dallin Young. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Good morning, Jim Whalen, J. Whalen Associates. In person again and happy again to be here. First of all, thanks to staff, good job on the effort so far. I'm here on behalf of Ambrose Gardens, which is a family-owned CBD producer on a farm in Valley Center. Again, not a big corporate entity. As I've gotten more involved in this process, I've been looking for a certain kind of operator. First of all, with an environmental justice component like the same one I'm hounding you on in the backcountry for renewable energy. Also a career path for people who don't have the opportunity otherwise. You can start out at the ground and work your way up. Equity of opportunity. Valley Center is not a wealthy community as much as it may seem, and it would be good if everybody could get involved that want to. And finally, health and wellness first. This CBD operation is next door to a seniors mobile home park who are the largest user of the products produced on the farm next door. And therefore, the Ambrose Gardens folks support staff items 1, 2C Romanet 1, which is the 24-month program, 3 and 4. Going the program environmental impact report route is by far the best way to go to ensure the largest number of otherwise qualified operators can proceed. And all of us who work in CEQA know what happens if you leave yourself exposed. The longer timeline will also allow for the socially equitable cannabis program to be in sync with the program, and that we just need to do that. So I thank you for your time and urge your support.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, good morning, Supervisors. My name is Dallin Young with Blue Water Government Affairs, and I'm here today representing the 5 current license holders operating in the unincorporated areas of the county. First, I would like to thank county staff, you supervisors and the county staff for your time and effort that you have dedicated to this process and in making sure that things are done right. I would like to encourage the Board of Supervisors to support staff recommendations 4A and 4B, and to support items 4C and 4D with the essential modifications that staff be directed to use the necessary CEQA exemptions that would allow for adult use sales and expansion of up to 10,000 square feet at their existing already licensed facilities without requiring an additional tedious, expensive, and redundant discretionary permit. You heard from my clients earlier about what happened to them in 2017 when the moratorium was put in place, and how the county's outdated regulations have continued to create roadblocks for them ever since. The prohibition of certain products at these facilities and inability to conduct adult use activity has only helped drive patients and consumers to the illicit market, all of which is counterproductive to the board's and community's desire to shut down these illegal operators. We need to provide tested, safe, and legal alternatives to the illicit market by allowing these edible sales and adult use products to be sold now rather than waiting an additional year or so by going through the permitting process. You also heard from the current license holders that they would like to provide internship and job training opportunities for potential or for our future entrepreneurs through the social equity program. It seems like the PEIR is moving forward as staff recommendations. We don't see why we need to postpone these training opportunities for our entrepreneurs while waiting for that to happen. If we're able to sell adult use products now and expand enough, we can provide these opportunities now and give our future entrepreneurs the training opportunities that they need. Thank you very much. And again, we encourage you to support items 4A and 4B and modifications to 4C and 4D. Thank you.
We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record, and I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And if you could please identify the first caller.
Our first caller is 7613. 7613, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a native to San Diego County, as my great-grandparents came to settle here over 100 years ago. I'm now raising my family here, as it's a unique and beautiful place. I come to speak directly to the dangerous and detrimental environmental impacts the marijuana industry will have on our county. I appreciate the staff has put together a very detailed report pointing out many different scenarios regarding environmental review, but they make no reference to the diverse environment that San Diego County depicts and county planning groups represent. San Diego County is the most biodiverse county within the entire United States, providing habitats for at-risk species found nowhere else in the world. The county ranges from the Mexican border to Camp Pendleton and from the Pacific coast to the Sonoran Desert, housing coastal sage scrub, Inglewood oak woodlands, native grasslands, conifer trees, and vernal pools, all habitats for a vast array of species. Based on this evidence, there is no one blanket environmental impact review approach that would substantially cover the vastly biodiverse county. The county planning groups have indicated the disparate ways that introducing a new plant such as marijuana would greatly throw off the sensitive ecosystems. Overusage of groundwater would only be the beginning of detrimental impact on our environment. I urge you to consider doing more research regarding CEQA review approaches that would better accommodate San Diego County, since it is not a one-size-fits-all county. To do otherwise is a vote against an effort to preserve our uniqueness and biodiverse environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6303. 6303, please press *6 to unmute. 6303, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Espinoza. I'm a resident mother and have been affected by a family member who has struggled with marijuana and substance abuse, as well as fallen in and out of the system my entire life. I'm really confused and upset with this premise of equity as you move forward to increase marijuana in the unincorporated areas of the county. And I question how you came to this decision. Was there a community needs assessment done and data gathered from these communities and their loved ones? Or is this a research-based practice similar to restorative justice practices? Or is this solely an equity issue for the profits of the marijuana industry? One of the biggest barriers for my uncle was that it was always hard for him to find work every time he would be released from jail or prison. And we knew that if he started going around those old and familiar circles, that he would fall back and relapse. Muscle memory is very strong. Meanwhile, I would see my grandmother, aunt, father, and family struggle internally and emotionally while watching my uncle as he was about to relapse and fall back into the system. This is why I asked what data was gathered, because I can tell you that the last thing family members want for a loved one is for them to be placed in any situation that could cause them to relapse in judgment. If we are so concerned with equity, why don't we put other policies in place that assist with reintegration into society, where people do not struggle to find work and where skills are built and certificates can be achieved? Let's not limit or reduce people like my uncle to the one skill, their knowledge of drugs. The process currently in place needs rebuilding, and we are too familiar with the broken and racist systems that continue with these oppressive cycles. From a concerned family member, this equity plan looks like one that perpetuates similar cycles that we are all too familiar with. If you really want to build equity, then I urge you to please do some research and see what other evidence-based opportunities or policies for reintegration into society can be set in place. Further, I hope that these reports and data gathered are made publicly available so that constituents like myself can understand the foundations of your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3187. 3187, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Armand King, COO and co-founder of Paving Great Futures and member of the Cannabis Stakeholders Group, also known as the CSG, and just wanted to speak on the particular importance of the county's decision to ensure that social equity is at the forefront of the proposed cannabis ordinance, and just wanted to thank all of the current county license holders for speaking up on social equity in each one of their presentations. Truly appreciate it and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3164. 3164, please press *6 to unmute. 3164, please press *6 to unmute. We'll come back. Our next speaker is 8923. 8923, please press *6 to unmute. 8923, please press *6 to unmute. We'll come back. Our next speaker is 5202. 5202, please press *6 to unmute. 5202, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is John Byram, and I've been a prevention specialist in North County for over 20 years and have also been in recovery for 35 years. Yesterday, this board discussed the need for harm reduction in combating overdose deaths. Today, I hope you'll discuss the need for comprehensive prevention strategies to prevent substance use disorder from starting in the first place. Decades of research tells us that 90% of those who suffered from substance use disorder started their drug use before the age of 18, primarily with most available drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. I am part of those statistics, and marijuana was my drug of choice. I still remember walking into a head shop in East San Diego and thinking, wow, drugs must not be so bad. They have a whole store for them. That was a long time ago. The environment we're creating for this generation scares me. We're now allowing pot billboards, radio ads, social media promotion, and strength of today's pot is high, is greater than the policies placed on the previous board to prohibit edibles, drinkables, and branded merchandise were meant to protect the public health. Last week, we saw a high school student on campus wearing a Cookies hoodie. If you don't know, I am guessing many teachers don't know. Cookies is a dispensary in La Mesa and throughout Southern California with writing and colors that mimic Sesame Street monsters. The state should prohibit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0706. 0706, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Terry Best, a member of D4. Thank you for taking this item up. The organizations where I sit on boards are Paving Great Futures and the San Diego Chapter of Americans for Safe Access. And we are members of the Cannabis Stakeholders Group. Andrea St. Julian is our spokesperson, and I wish to stand with Andrea as she speaks for the group. I wish to thank the Board of Supervisors for putting social equity first, as the Cannabis Stakeholders Group has committed to do. And thank you very much for your time and your service to San Diego.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1453. 1453, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Jason Baker. I have lived in Spring Valley near Casa de Oro for about 20 years. We're a diverse community near Mount Miguel where families, hikers, mountain bikers, and others enjoy the beauty of our environment. My community is also infected by marijuana dispensaries that put the safety of our neighbors and children at risk. As someone who enjoys the serenity and beauty of San Diego County and cares deeply for wildlife and the environment, I oppose the idea of the planned degradation of our lands and waterways by the corporate cannabis industry. Pesticides and chemicals like butane used in the cultivation and processing of cannabis leach into our already polluted environment, causing irreversible damage to fish, birds, wildlife, and other delicate creatures. Our county already suffers from limited resources like water, which is desperately needed to sustain life among people and wild creatures. The unsustainable and toxic impacts to our region are unthinkable. I say no to the expansion of the corrupt cannabis industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7239. 7239, please press *6 to unmute.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors. My name is Madison Matella, and tomorrow I graduate from Oceanside High School. I've dedicated over 500 hours of service as the president of my school's Substance Abuse Prevention Club, partnered with North Coastal Prevention Coalition. Upon reading today's agenda, I was appalled that the only considerations that were made prior to the decision to expand the marijuana industry was social equity in the environment. There is no mention of how edibles, adult-use marijuana, or branded merchandise would jeopardize public health. The SAMHSA documents that the THC content in today's marijuana is 3 times as concentrated as it was 25 years ago, which increases addiction and harms San Diego County on many levels. For example, there is a lack of consideration of preventing marijuana use among drivers, or how to measure if someone on the road has overconsumed. Just like alcohol, however, marijuana causes slower reaction time and decreased coordination, which increases chances of car accidents. Also, SAMHSA points out that 1 in 10 adults who use marijuana become addicted. There are 3.3 million people in San Diego County. Only 10% of them consume marijuana. That is 33,000 who are addicted, who may lose their jobs, experience mental health issues, or end up on the streets. Just as, or even more important, is marijuana's effects on youth, who are 1.5 more times likely to experience marijuana addiction than adults. The California Healthy Kids Survey records that teen marijuana vaping jumped from 2% to 17% between 2017 and 2019. We must realize that this number will rise, not drop, with the new measures proposed. It is only logical that more of the drugs will end up in the hands of minors. I urge you to ask yourselves why you are so concerned about the environment and making sure there is equity, while you neglect the very people who make up the future of this county. San Diego County is a thriving, beautiful community that does not need more weed to be successful. Please consider public health and the safety of your children over greed, for every minor in San Diego County is relying on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9600. 9600, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Brittany Biesterfeld, and I work with and for Gina Austin, a land use attorney that has been working in the cannabis field for the last 8 years or so. Our firm represents clients in over 25 jurisdictions throughout California, so we have a lot of experience with government entities enacting new ordinances. We appreciate staff's diligence in getting solutions to the board on how to enact an ordinance and comply with CEQA. Our firm submitted a letter regarding possible CEQA exemption options for the ordinance that I will not reiterate here, although I do believe there is merit to passing the ordinance in the same manner that occurred in 2010 pursuant to a CEQA exemption. There is a distinction between the legacy operators and new operators that would be permitted under a new ordinance. We support the recommendations of Blue Water for the legacy operators. Our comments, however, are directed only to the item 1 options related to the ordinance for new future operators within the board letter. What we do want to address are some of the logistical issues that arise when a jurisdiction chooses to proceed with a ministerial land use permit. Depending on how the process is structured, the regulatory license may be ministerial and may not subject the applicant to secret review. However, as you know, if the county is granted enough authority in the issuance of the license to deny or modify the project on the basis of environmental consequences, the permit process is discretionary. If the county is moving forward with a PEIR, we urge the board and staff to consider the following when drafting the ordinance and licensing requirements. 1, what happens if the project is located within a B or D designator? Now the project is subject to CEQA. How many properties will be available in appropriate zones without these designators so that the county doesn't spend 3 years in the environmental process at a cost of over $600K only for applicants to still be required to conduct site-specific CEQA review? Number 2, will deviations be allowed? If so, the project again is subject to CEQA. 3, if there is no project-specific CEQA analysis to the state, The state will require it anyways, so this is really just kicking the ball down the road. We don't know the timing or process of the CEQA review in light of the merging of the state regulatory agencies next month.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is 4603. 4603, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Mark Kudrick with the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. As the largest chamber on the West Coast, we represent about 2,500 businesses and push for solutions conducive to the business community at large. Today, we speak in support for the option of a comprehensive program environmental impact report as the best way to move forward with cannabis legalization in the county. Other options would make for an approach that favors long and expensive review periods, which would impose additional barriers to would-be entrants into the local market. It's important to legalize cannabis in a way that truly promotes social equity and does not provide advantage to the illicit market. Although a program environmental impact report will take the longest time to carry out, this will also allow for the social equity program to better develop before the issuance of commercial permits. We appreciate county staff for their outreach efforts to date with industry stakeholders, and we look forward to further involvement on how we can create a strategy that provides equitable economic opportunity in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2153. 2153, please press star 6 to unmute. 2153.
Good morning. This is Kelly McCormick. I'm a resident of District 5. I regularly attend my county planning group, and I can tell you that I have never heard anyone approach this group asking for more marijuana or marijuana advertising. We thank Supervisor Desmond for recognizing this and for recognizing the harms caused by marijuana commercialization and high THC concentrates. In the words of Dr. Karen Randall, an emergency medicine physician, quote, "We cannot put more drugs into the community and expect that no harm will occur." Communities of color and lower income areas have long been targeted by the alcohol and tobacco industries and bear a higher percentage of smoke shops and liquor stores. Is it equity to burden them with marijuana storefronts and advertising as well? A better equity strategy would be improving educational and workforce opportunities and after-school programs for youth. On another matter, this item contains 3 separate issues which should be heard individually. CEQA studies are a must to protect our precious water supplies and stem the rise of greenhouse gases. Indoor pot grows require massive amounts of electricity and natural gas to run artificial lights and climate controls around the clock. With the rest of the state under drought conditions, it is short-sighted to leave this essential issue out of the conversation. It appears that you are trying to push this issue through without adequate research, notice, or oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1048. 1048, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Shane Duffy, and I'm a local college student and a resident of the unincorporated area for the past 22 years. I just want to give my perspective as a young person on this topic and as someone who's seen the effects of the industry firsthand. When you allow cultivation, you aren't creating entrepreneurs and innovators like it was stated in the previous speakers. You're directly hurting the growth and development of middle school, high school, and college students, and you're normalizing the use of a detrimental drug. Surrounding communities of young people with marijuana grows will absolutely increase their use and worsen the effects that we've already seen with the current cultivation in place. Don't sell out my peers and I and the communities that we grew up in just for a quick buck. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6676. 6676, please press star 6 to unmute. 6676, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. I'm Katie Papaniak. The socially equitable cannabis program is not a logical plan. I have provided mental health services in many rural areas of San Diego County. We provided workforce development with goals of training people to make a sustainable wage. Many in drug treatment were trying to get their children back from the system after a series of arrests or prison time. It would never have been a good idea for them to work in the marijuana industry. Beyond that, wages in pot shops and cultivation are not sustainable wages in San Diego County and usually don't provide benefits. This program will not have a positive impact on economic development, as the cost of increased services like law and code enforcement, healthcare providers, and water use are far greater, not to mention the cost to the surrounding community. These jobs are not sustainable wages. The only individuals to profit from this program are wealthy investors using equity to sell this campaign. After hearing from all the folks yesterday that lost income during COVID, it seems these issues should be addressed before this program rubber stamped. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3496. 3496, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, supervisors and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jean Duffy, and as a 27-year resident of unincorporated San Diego County, I can't stress enough the negative outcomes we will see if you allow marijuana cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, and retail sales to occur in our unincorporated areas. Cultivation leads to environmental degradation due to all the poisonous chemicals used to grow this new hybrid, highly potent plant. Also in San Diego, we are already limited on water, and each plant requires up to 6 gallons of water per day. So I ask you, should we be using our precious water to grow drugs? Distribution of marijuana would mean more trucks on our roads as the drug is delivered from cultivation areas to manufacturing centers and to retailer storefronts, and as well as delivery to private residences. Manufacturing includes hash oil extraction to get the high THC butter or wax that these places are selling. This requires the use of butane, and this process oftentimes leads to explosions. Much of the backcountry is highly vulnerable area for wildfires. These are not areas that are safe for manufacturing marijuana products. Marijuana dispensaries bring with them crime and violence. If this measure passes, you'll make the rural areas destinations for purchasing drugs, getting high, and then put stone drivers on our windy roads, putting all who live and visit unincorporated areas at risk. If you decide to go this route for the reasons I just spoke about, I hope you will go through the full environmental impact studies so you fully understand the negative impacts that marijuana commercialization will have on our vulnerable areas. This would also give adequate time for the County Planning Commission to learn from staff about this issue and to hear from local planning groups and from the community so they can make educated recommendations to you. Why is the Board of Supervisors making decisions on land use policy without sufficient input from your Planning Commission? Policies with the possibility of this much damage should require the highest level of scrutiny and environmental review. And I hope, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3164. 3164, please press *6 to unmute. 3164, please press *6 to unmute. We'll come back. Our next speaker is 4109. 4109, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Hannah Bay. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego County Farm Bureau. The San Diego County Farm Bureau supports the commercial production of cannabis as an agricultural crop when done in full compliance with state and local regulations. And I'm here today to speak in support of providing a legal framework for the cultivation of cannabis in the unincorporated county. This must be done quickly. We need a legal framework adopted now. Our local farming community needs legal market access to this commodity. As a reminder, cultivating medicinal cannabis has been legal in the state of California since 1996, 25 years. Cultivating recreational cannabis has been legal in the state of California since 2016, 5 years. San Diego County is not a pioneer in the legalization of cultivation of this agricultural commodity. We are late to the game. We need to provide a legal framework so that not only can we eradicate the black market, but so that we can provide a legal path for farmers who want to grow and sell this commodity. Your backcountry economy has been crushed in the last year under COVID. We are a specialty crop agricultural community. We need access to this high value commodity. We also need the environmental impact report not to be utilized as a tool to halt or excessively delay providing a legal framework. The process needs to be expedited with the additional budget allocation so that we can catch our jurisdiction up to the other jurisdictions across the state and region. We need to provide the legal framework sooner than later. We need clarity. And this conversation is less about CEQA and more about the controversy surrounding the agricultural commodity. We are asking to please provide a legal, structured framework so that we can be competitive across the state and nation. And lastly, in terms of social equality, the San Diego County Farm Bureau looks forward to working collaboratively to establish a framework that works for both growers and social justice advocates.
Thank you.
Your time.
Our next speaker is 4592. 4592, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, board, supervisors. Having relatives, friends, and colleagues who live in unincorporated areas and serve on county planning groups like Fallbrook, Campo, and Borrego, I share their concerns for the risks to their communities, the quality of life and their environment with an ordinance they never anticipated, asked for, and don't want. Fletcher chose to exploit the unincorporated communities of Supervisors Desmond and Anderson while exempting his own district with his top-down policy. County planning groups were created to provide the feedback to inform county policies that would affect their communities, and the county had a responsibility to consult them first. They were not consulted first. A marijuana lobbyist was instead. County planning groups like Campo, Ramona, Valley Center, and Borrego wish you had a modicum of the concern for those living in communities, in unincorporated communities, the most impacted by this ordinance, as you do for marijuana business investors, profiteers, and those with drug crime histories. County staff talk about the county's goal to increase public and community engagement, use data to support decisions, pay attention to unincorporated priorities, and protect public safety. If that were true, unincorporated communities would have been asked if they wanted marijuana businesses in their communities in the first place. County ordinance presenters were often unprepared for the ability of unincorporated community residents to see that this ordinance had nothing to do with helping their communities and everything to do with helping the marijuana industry. Unincorporated communities are being used as dumping grounds for marijuana businesses that would be opposed in the communities with greater political agencies. Unincorporated residents ask how a social equity program could impose inequities on some groups while favoring others.
Thank you.
Be considered fair.
Our next speaker is 5555. 5555. Please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Tyler James. My family has volunteered with the American Cancer Society for many years to help raise awareness about the dangers of smoking and vaping. That's why an article in Forbes magazine caught my eye, entitled "How Tobacco Giant Altria is Becoming a Cannabis Company." You may be aware that Altria was formerly known as Philip Morris. Their secret documents came to light in the 1980s as part of the class action lawsuits against tobacco companies, detailing years of deception about health damage from smoking and youth-oriented marketing. They continue fighting to protect menthol-flavored cigarettes marketed heavily to the Black community. In the words of the article, Altria is well on its way to becoming one of the world's biggest and most influential cannabis companies. 3 years ago, Altria spent $1.8 billion to buy a stake in the Cronos Group, a multinational cannabis company. Since then, they have added cannabis technology to their portfolio, including patents on vape devices. To protect these investments, Altria is spending money at both the state and federal levels to promote marijuana legalization. It's companies like Altria and other multi-million-dollar corporations that will profit from expanded marijuana access. As the saying goes, follow the money. These companies do not care about the collateral damage caused by their products. Just look at the tragic results that menthol cigarettes have caused in Black communities. Have they cared about the cancers, heart attacks, strokes, and premature loss of life due to smoking? There may be talk of social equity, but behind the scenes, companies like Altria are pulling the strings. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1544. 1544. Please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Andrea St. Julian, and I am the facilitator of the Cannabis Stakeholders Group, also known as CSG. CSG members include dozens of organizations and individuals working throughout the San Diego cannabis industry. I'm here today to speak on behalf of CSG. CSG supports and applauds the county's movement forward to create a healthy and rational cannabis industry that serves to promote the interests of local residents and businesses. Of particular importance to CSG is the county's decision to ensure that social equity is at the forefront of the proposed cannabis program. For this reason, the CSG is in agreement with and supports Planning Services recommendation that the county conduct a PEIR in support of the proposed cannabis program. CSG feels strongly that the county must move forward as swiftly as possible to draft and enact the proposed cannabis ordinances. But that goal should never be used as an excuse to compromise the integrity of the legal structure the cannabis program seeks to create. The long-run needs of social equity, local cannabis businesses, and San Diegans as a whole must be at the forefront of the ordinance process. Planning Services letter to the board indicates that there is a proposal to split the cannabis program into two components, thereby allowing the fast tracking of cannabis farming. The CSG opposes such a split because of the great disadvantage it would place social equity. Before moving forward with any licensing phase of the county's new cannabis program, it is imperative that the social equity component be in place and that social equity applicants have been given sufficient time to become appropriately competitive in the industry. To allow for, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7234. 7234, please press star 6 to unmute.
Hold on one second. And we're going to go back to that last caller.
Okay.
3164.
Hello?
Is that the last caller?
I think
hello?
Oh, here it is right here. 3164.
Andrea St. Julian, if you could finish your comment, please. It looks like she dropped off. Okay.
Our next speaker is 7234. 7234.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Skelly. As a parent of 3 vulnerable adult sons, I have grave concerns about their well-being and especially their good health choices. As I consider item 2, I feel that all my work to discourage them from marijuana use as a solution for their problems are being shut down by the Board of Supervisors' proposal to bring marijuana businesses to the unincorporated areas of the county. I can't decide which is worse, the actual businesses or the idea that the supervisors that support good mental and physical health are promoting this idea. How can a county who recognizes the predatory practices of tobacco industry and its flavored tobacco products and identifies secondhand tobacco smoke and vapor in public and shared spaces as a public health problem, one of the 3 of the county's live well most compelling problems, overlook flavored marijuana products sold at marijuana storefronts and secondhand marijuana smoke and vapor, a product of merchandise sold at storefronts and produced in marijuana factories. This is definitely an equity issue, since a large portion of financially challenged families and ethnically diverse individuals live in multi-unit housing, and children disproportionately live in these apartment complexes where drifting tobacco and marijuana smoke precipitates asthma and other respiratory consequences. There has never been a better time than now for our county in its quest to improve health inequities to recommend no new marijuana storefronts in the county and to curtail the sale of flavored marijuana products. Then the county really would be a leader in reducing health inequities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3800. 3800. Please press star 6 to unmute.
Thank you. Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Barbara Gordon. I'm here today to express my concern regarding the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, guidelines in your staff report. A comprehensive county upfront environmental review should be required for all existing and new businesses, as it is vital to the quality of life and safety of our environment in San Diego. The county cannot scale back to a lower level of review process just because of the length of time to conduct the review or the cost to the county. Don't fool yourself into thinking there will be no significant effect on the environment. Marijuana cultivation grow sites will have a significant impact on the environment. High water usage when we're already in an extreme drought conditions. Odor, pesticides, fungicides, and other chemicals used that drift into neighboring communities all need to be considered. Right now in the county, there are residents who are dealing with serious health problems associated from drifting chemicals from a grow site. Residents should not have to tolerate any odor or drifting chemicals used from these businesses. The quality of life for those impacted cannot be underestimated or dismissed by the county. There will be direct and indirect consequences to the environment with marijuana cultivation. The county's highest priority should be a strong CEQA review to protect all communities. We should not accommodate the marijuana industry while sacrificing the residents or our environment. I hope you have noticed today, all those who are supporting this ordinance all have a financial interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7277. 7277, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Diane Grace, and I am writing as a mother and grandmother to ask why you continue to kowtow to the marijuana industry. Many of us have grown up watching the financial influence of the tobacco industry and attracting users and feel we are seeing a repeat. We ask ourselves, how many years will we have to go before the truth of tobacco's impact creating poor public health from marijuana consumption becomes crystal clear? I do appreciate the staff's description of the CEQA review choices, especially the comprehensive environmental review over the next 2 years of the entire marijuana business applicant proposal, determining all the impacts of the marijuana business before it begins operating. However, what really would be important is providing the county planning groups more clear information regarding what the Board of Supervisors is proposing. Otherwise, it just looks like 3 supervisors who have no to little unincorporated areas in their districts are bullying the other 2 supervisors whose responsibility it is now to take care of the unincorporated areas. Facts are facts. Marijuana is the #1 reason teens are coming into treatment today. Marijuana is not the same as it was years ago, with the high level of THC so much greater. And marijuana taxes do not bring in enough revenue to offset the cost of enforcement or permitting. Thanks you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6598. 6598, please press *6 to unmute. 6598, please press *6 to unmute. We'll come back. Our next caller is 8923. 8923, please press *6 to unmute. 8923, please press *6 to unmute. Recalling 3164. 3164, please press *6 to unmute.
Yes,
My name is Dan Nerinks. I'm a longtime resident of the unincorporated area of Hamul, and find that the present processing of this idea of extending marijuana dispensaries to the unincorporated area, rural area, is just crazy.
Sir, if you
I read from
audio record. Can you please state your name for the audio record?
Yes, my name is Dan Nerinks. Okay, the Proposition 64, Section 2, Paragraph E, regarding cannabis states the following. The Adult Use of Marijuana Act sets up a comprehensive system governing marijuana businesses at the state level and safeguards local control, allowing local governments to regulate marijuana-related activities, to subject marijuana businesses to zoning and permitting requirements, and to ban marijuana businesses by a vote of the people within the locality. You cannot ignore the unincorporated areas as anything but a locality that you must get our vote for continuing this ridiculous process that you are involved in at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Recalling 8923, 8923. Please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Janet Mulder, and I am from Hamul and have lived there for over 50 years and have been a member of our Hamul-Dulcera Community Planning Group. However, I'm calling today just as an individual because I think it's interesting to know that the two supervisors promoting this proposal have little or no unincorporated areas within their district. So they do not have a handle on how much more inappropriate it is to allow these businesses to operate in the rural backcountry county than within their cities. So why are we recommending these changes to the backcountry? People don't want cannabis sold in their communities as it draws a criminal element. There are lots of dispensaries in cities to get cannabis, and it would only create traffic. As your speaker just before me stated, this Proposition 64, which, by the way, was listed as overwhelmingly supported, which just isn't true because only 57% of the voters supported it, hardly consider that one overwhelming. Almost half of us voted no. But remember that the proposition did say that the communities would be able to determine whether or not they wanted to allow it within their community and not be mandated as a total county. In 2017, the Board of Supervisors voted to prohibit permits for new medical facilities with a 2035 sunset clause. In Colorado, the sheriff and DA both opposed the opposition, and it was proven that it did not eliminate the drug cartel and, in fact, increased the number of cartels in Colorado after the law was implemented. My suggestion is that we're asking you supervisors to support the existing ordinance from 2017, realizing that cannabis is actually marijuana and it is a gateway drug, giving greater accessibility to youth. The more on the market, the greater the exposure to kids. Evidence through the sheriff that in the city of... Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last caller is 6598. 6598, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. This is Judy Strang calling. I'd like to share my two concerns regarding the proposition that you're looking at today, item 2. I'm particularly concerned because the two county planning groups I attend have not received the information that you're considering today. They would have welcomed the maps on 16 and 17 that explained the CEQA options. I suggest you postpone this until this information can come to our planning groups. It's really not fair for them not to have the information they need when this will change the way they go about their business. And 2, I'd like to address the issue regarding social equity. As someone who had a family member who went to prison for his marijuana sales, I can tell you with great assurity that his family would never want him doing that again, and that he knew at the time that he was breaking the law. Granted, the law has changed, but he knew completely and absolutely he was breaking the law, and he chose to do it again. This is not appropriate behavior that we would want to bring into our communities, people who knowingly break the law. So let's take a pause and let's make sure our county planning groups have an opportunity to hear this information. And let's make sure we understand what social equity is really all about, and that we choose those things that really assist those people who have had issues in their past that have made it difficult for them now. Running a marijuana business isn't that. And the people who love them don't want that for them either. Thank you.
That concludes public comment on this item, Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who called in. Look, I'm really pleased to see our county moving forward on this issue. Obviously, more than a year ago, we didn't have the support, and then we came back earlier this year with 4 supervisors, 80% of the board, and a bipartisan coalition saying we need to move forward on creating a safe, regulated, and legal framework surrounding this. And I think the progress that we are making is very good. I'm also in particular appreciative of the social equity component. I know there's been tremendous work, clear direction by our board on a multitude of public policy aims to include issues of social equity. And this is challenging. This is not easy to align and assess all of these various components and parts. And I really want to commend both our county team and all of the stakeholders involved for their commitment and their willingness to sit down and work through these issues. Sometimes very vexing issues, very challenging issues, to really try and come up with what we think is an ideal path, or the best path, maybe not ideal, but the best path forward as a county. And I think that is good. We also find ourselves in a little bit of a dilemma. And the dilemma is that in order to properly ensure we have a long-lasting ordinance that has the right structure in place, that has the right permitting process in place, that has many of the right legal protections, I believe that will take more time. And I am supportive of following the standard programmatic EIR timeframe. I think that when we're trying to build a long-lasting ordinance at our county, getting that part right, I think will ensure greater certainty as we move into the future, and it will also allow us to continue the important work being done around our social justice and social equity groups. And so I think as we move forward, it would be my prerogative that we would follow that standard programmatic EIR timeline and ensure that we do this right and we get it done and we allow social equity components to be fully developed. The dilemma occurs in this. That is a longer time frame. And in the interim, between now and then, we have legitimate issues of access. How do we ensure that people can have access while we know where we are going as a county? We are also at the same time increasing significantly enforcement on unlicensed operators, which is something I fully support. We did it both in our initial efforts. We're also exploring it in the budget. And so increasing that enforcement, which is the appropriate thing to do, I believe requires us as a board to take some steps to provide some flexibility to those 5 original permit holders who I think we can all agree have dealt with tremendous instability, with tremendous uncertainty, and have borne a heavy burden over the actions of the last few years here. And so in that same vein, I am also appreciative of groups like Paving Great Futures who have worked with these folks, who said we have social equity components. I appreciate these 5 groups' willingness to engage in social equity issues, understanding that a part of the long-term ordinance will be outline specific social equity components. But I feel like this bridges us. It gives us the opportunity to bridge from where we are today until where we want to get in terms of developing an ordinance. And so what I would like to do, and I ask for your patience a little bit, is just to start the discussion, outline a motion for us. But before I do that, I have 2 questions for council. And one is under the business models around being able to change business models. It is my understanding and reading that there are CEQA exemptions that allow people to go from medicinal only to adult use. And I have a list of 13 jurisdictions, including 3 in the county of San Diego, that have utilized that CEQA exemption. And I've talked to the cities who were a part of the city of San Diego who all felt it was fine. And so I'm curious why there is not a recommendation to allow us to use a CEQA exemption to move to adult use.
Through the chair, I think staff has analyzed those different jurisdictions, so I'm asking staff to respond to what they analyzed for the different jurisdictions, and then we can follow up with any kind of legal additional comments that might be necessary.
Rami, do you want to just provide some of the comparisons, and then council can come back to the specific CEQA exemption related concerns as far as why that's not an option before the board? Thank you.
Chair, I can provide the example of the city of San Diego, which relied on a general exemption to allow for the adult use of cannabis. That exemption, I believe, has expired. It will expire on July 1st. So staff did not pursue that exemption. In terms of our analysis and the degree to which we would be recommending the conversion, we will defer to County Council to explain how that process took place.
Back to you.
Yeah. Yes, the exemption that staff is talking about and the city utilized also is 26055H in the Business and Professions Code. The last time that we were before you, we talked about that exemption that had a sunset date. There was a direction for the board not to pursue that. As part of that exemption, it does defer the CEQA review to the individual permittees or people that submit applications. So while it allows us to, or would have allowed us to enact an ordinance in the short term, it would defer all of that CEQA mitigation to the applicants to review, and then there would be appeals that would be on each and every applicant potentially. And what staff has looked at, because of the direction was not to pursue that exemption, was to look at the program EIR, which would allow for greater streamlining for the applicants later on down the line, which we believed was more in line with the social equity component also.
Yeah, which is a little bit of a policy decision there, but if we can move forward with the programmatic EIR in total and as a board allow the CEQA exemptions to do the conversion from medicinal to adult use, that is an option before us. There's nothing in the law that prohibits us from doing that.
No, for the existing dispensaries, if that's what we're referring to.
Right, that is.
Yeah. We cannot definitively say that exemption will work because of the zoning ordinance and the increased scope of the changes until we see more analysis. But the board definitely has full discretion to direct staff to prepare the ordinance, and staff will continue to analyze that application, the exemption, and return to the board for further consideration and review.
And the same would be true utilizing the same CEQA exemption to expand. As I read it, the CEQA exemption also allows the opportunity to expand up to 10,000 square feet.
To the chair, the CEQA exemption to expand up to 10,000 square feet is a separate CEQA exemption.
Right.
That's section 15301, and that generally consists of the operation, repair, leasing, or minor alteration of existing facilities that have negligible or no expansion of the existing use. That exemption goes on to state some examples, and one of those examples is potentially including 10,000 square foot of extension of existing facilities. We reviewed that example and determined that based on square footage of existing dispensaries, that it may not adequately be described as negligible or no expansion of those existing use. That example may more appropriately be used in a situation where you have, let's say, a 300,000 square foot commercial facility, and they're adding 10,000 square feet. So it would be a 3% overall increase instead of, for the existing dispensaries we have, they range from 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. So if you're adding additional 10,000 square feet, maybe an additional 1,000%. But
that would be on that individual entity, right? If they were to do it, then they were to get sued, then they would have to defend under that under a definition of what is. I mean, is that correct?
Well, no, if we were to use this exemption to change our ordinance, then the county would take the
risk,
what that is, the risk on passing the ordinance, because you would be allowing these facilities by right to expand up to 10,000 square feet. I think what staff has outlined as one of the options is to defer that CEQA review to each one of the applicants through a discretionary permit review. And
how long does that take, though?
Staff has those timelines.
Chair, so in the case where we were to create a pathway for the individual dispensaries to seek permits for the expansion, we would anticipate that that could be done under an administrative permit, which takes approximately 6 to 12 months and could cost between $4,000 and $9,000 approximately.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna put a motion on the table here, understanding risk is not illegal, risk is just risk, and there's a risk in everything that we do, both in an action we take, there's also a risk in an action we don't take, along with consequences on both. I'm gonna walk through this a couple times because we also have, there's a little conflict in the numbering between the board letter and the worksheet that was provided, which creates tremendous confusion, and I know in the future, we would need to try and align these so that when one group is talking about 2CI, that matches both worksheets, and it is very, very confusing. So if we'll bear with me here, I'm going to essentially renumber what I think are 9 recommendations that I want to include in a motion, and then we can have board deliberation and see where we go from there. The first recommendation would be consistent with the board letter, just find in accordance today's actions are exempt from CEQA. Standard language that is at the top of the board letter. The second would be the same. Receive the information provided in the board letter related to options for environmental impact, quality, compliance, direct staff, right, to do that. So in my motion, recommendations 1 and 2 are just the first 2 boxes of the board letter. Recommendation 3 in my board letter would be to adopt the standard programmatic EIR timeframe, approximately 2 years. No appropriation of funds required. This is a staff recommended option. In our worksheet, this is C1. In the board letter, this is 2CI. We're going to make this the new number 3. This is the long-term overarching programmatic EIR with social equity component built in. All right? So we now have recommendations 1, 2. That becomes recommendation 3. Recommendation 4 is to remove the sunset date of April 14th, 2022. In our worksheet, this is A1. In the board letter, it is board letter 3A. So this is becoming recommendation number 4 to remove sunset date of April 14th, 2022. Recommendation 5 is a new one, which would allow CEQA exemptions to move to adult use. Recommendation 6 is allow existing permit holders to sell edible and drinkable cannabis products. In the worksheet, that is C2. In the board letter, that is 3B. Recommendation 7 is allow existing permit holders to sell branded merchandise. In the worksheet, this is C3. In the board letter, it is also C3. Recommendation 8 is a new one, would allow CEQA exemptions to expand up to 10,000 square feet. Right. Yes. That's 8. Recommendation number 9 would allow the transfer of business licenses amongst the existing permit holders. Now I'm going to restate all 9 of those just so we're clear, and then we will go into board deliberation and discussion. So it is a 9-part recommendation. Recommendations 1 and 2 are the standard template language at the top of the board letter. Recommendation number 3 will, for the direct county to perform the standard programmatic EIR timeframe. 2 years, no appropriation of funded, staff recommended option. Recommendation 4 is to remove the sunset date of April 14th, 2022 for the 5 existing operators. Recommendation 5 is to allow a CEQA exemption to move to adult use for the existing 5 permit holders. Recommendation 6 is to allow existing permit holders to sell edible and drinkable cannabis products. Recommendation 7 is to allow existing permit holders to sell branded merchandise. Recommendation number 8 is to allow existing permit holders to utilize CEQA exemptions to expand up to 10,000 square feet. And recommendation number 9 is to allow existing permit holders to transfer business licenses. So we have a 9-part motion. Is there a second to that?
I'm happy to second it. And then I just wanted to say, Chair Fletcher, that I do also want to thank county staff for all of their work on this item. And when we introduced this letter last time around, I think access and equity in the cannabis industry was one of our priorities. I too believe 2 years is a long time, but I understand the process. And I also want to thank some of the cannabis stakeholders, equity stakeholders that met with me and shared their perspective, and even within them, they were trying to come to, a balance on this. And so I am happy to make the second motion and continue to have a discussion on this. If there is a way, I think that as the five, particularly the five folks who are already in this industry, can continue to engage future business owners, and I think for me that would be really, really important because access to capital is not something that comes easy, and I think that if we find opportunities for them, especially for our communities of color, to really be engaged, and as I think I've mentioned to the industry before, allocating resources for education around this issue, I think it's really important so that our communities have access as well. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. And I want to lend my full support to what Vice Chair Vargas said there. We appreciate, for the five folks, the equity work that's being done. We appreciate the commitment. It is a part of where we're going as a county. It will be a part of our long-term ordinance that comes forward. And the full expectation of this board is those efforts you're doing now will continue between now and the adoption of the full ordinance. And so we take it as a measure of faith that those efforts will continue in good faith and will continue. And it is a part of this board's willingness to say, as a part of this bridge, to get where we need to go, understanding how important that is, that those efforts will continue. And so we appreciate that, and we certainly expect that. So thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Is it possible for staff to zoom in on the screen where you laid this out? I was tracking on my worksheets.
Yeah, the worksheets don't match
all over the place.
So let me ask our clerk if it's possible, if we can pull up the 9 recommendations. Yeah, so Supervisor Anderson, it's going to take about 2 minutes. He's consolidated 9, and then we will put that up on the screen. I think that'll be helpful not only for the board, but the broader public.
It's less confusing than what I have.
Very confusing, I agree. Let me go, Supervisor Anderson. Let me go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer while we work on that, and then we'll come back to you when that's put up. Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Thank you. It's just a couple thoughts. I definitely strongly support the programmatic EIR. I think it's important to take a comprehensive look at things. I also want to acknowledge, the diverse viewpoints that were shared today. There's no question in my mind that an effectively regulated cannabis market is not only in the best interest of of the community, but is also in alignment and in accordance with state law. And there's a lot of research on this, on the importance of having a regulated cannabis market in order to contribute to our community. At the same time, I do want to acknowledge the many people who testified with concerns, and I want to make sure people know that this is why we do an EIR. This is the whole point, is because we have a programmatic EIR in order to assess the impacts on our communities and on our environment. There were a lot of environmental concerns raised, and I am sure that staff will come back with a program approach that takes those environmental concerns into account, because certainly the environmental impacts are really, in our community are really important to me. And I have great confidence that that this EIR will be done effectively and will take those concerns into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. Okay, I think we've got our 9 recommendations here. We will put up on the screen and then review them one time, make sure we have clarity on what we're doing. We have a very fast typing clerk. I want to commend him for his
Chair
for his
Fletcher,
efforts.
while we're doing that, we'd like to ask for a little bit of clarification on recommendations number 5 and 8, that the direction is to prepare an ordinance under an exemption for the board's review and consideration to allow adult use and expand up to 10,000 square feet.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to, give me 1 second here. So on 5 and 8, that would be to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for CEQA exemptions. Right, and then 5 would be direct staff to prepare an ordinance for board consideration for CEQA exemptions for adult use for existing permit holders. Thank you for that clarity. Is that everything? What else we need to clear?
The recommendation number 8, is that, again, is that for the preparation of an ordinance processing an exemption?
Yes.
Okay. So it's similar to recommendation number 5?
That's right. 5 and 8 would be the same and in process. Okay. Good. Let me go back to Supervisor Anderson. Make sure you can see those 9 recommendations. See if you have any comments or questions on those.
Mr. Chair, that's really helpful. Thank you for doing that. I would like to point out that what I thought was so fascinating was the map that during the testimony that they brought up, where it showed where the current cannabis is in other cities, where the current 5 cannabis and unincorporated areas are, and all the illegal cannabis. And I thought I want to thank the board again, all my colleagues, for putting money into law enforcement, because clearly those illegal pot shops, you can see how they're impacting the community, and that many of the people in the unincorporated area associate them as legal cannabis when they're illegal pot shops. And you can understand why they're so angry about it, to have all these illegal shops. I mean, they're there long enough that they can be mapped. That tells you that there's a problem. So I'm fine voting for this, and I appreciate the clarity that you've added by making the motion on the board as you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. And I appreciate and fully support your efforts around increased enforcement. I do think it is appropriate. We need to, if we want a safe, regulated, and legal market, that ensures it is safe, regulated, and legal. And so was pleased to support your call for more enforcement, and we'll continue that. And I think a part of that requires us to provide access to folks in a safe, regulated, and legal way, which these 5 existing permit holders can do, provided, again, we can use this as a bridge to the development of the full ordinance and efforts moving forward. So thank you, Supervisor Anderson, for that. We'll go to Supervisor Desmond now.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, so I just got the internet unstable signal or whatever here. But I just want to say that, I do support the enforcement of the legal markets that are out there right now. I absolutely support that. But I can't support the motion today. I just fundamentally do not agree that we should be promoting a cannabis distribution and sale throughout the unincorporated area. I mean, there's access. There's already delivery of marijuana. They can get it if they need it. But in particular to marijuana dispensaries that allow on-site consumption. I think that's a horrific idea in the unincorporated area. We're still dealing, even through COVID, with a mental health crisis, homelessness crisis. And, what I learned about homelessness is many of them do have mental health issues, and they cope with it through drugs and alcohol and living on the streets. So I think this is kind of the last thing we should be doing, is exacerbating these issues with the promotion of marijuana. But, more than anything, this is a land use issue. That's why it's here on a Wednesday. It's land use day. So I would urge all the stakeholders and community members and planning group members, as this process goes forward with the EIR, to request more restrictions in their communities on siting these facilities, such as increased setbacks, the total maximum number per community, and in particular the on-site consumption. And I do have, as far as medical cannabis, and one of the speakers mentioned that his mother needed cannabis for her to, get through her crisis. I think that's a great idea, the medical cannabis, but you get your medicine from a pharmacy, from real doctors. And I find it kind of ironic when I hear these dispensaries calling people their patients. I guess they're their patients, but I don't know that any of the people of selling the cannabis at these dispensaries are doctors. So, I think medical marijuana is fine. Get it at your pharmacy, just like every other medicine. So right now, we had a report yesterday that the number of deaths in San Diego County due to drug overdose is at an all-time high, and it's continuing to rise. Sandag's data show that the vast majority of those who started down this path of drug overdose did so initially starting with marijuana and then leading further on. So for those reasons, I'm not going to be able to support the motion today. I appreciate staff's work, but those are my reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. All right, so we have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to adopt the 9 recommendations which are outlined on the screen in front of us. Let me do a final round with my colleagues, see if there's any comments or questions. All right, ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Anderson?
Sorry about that. I keep hitting the unmute and it wouldn't unmute. Aye, thank you.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
No.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes with Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're now going to move to agenda item 8, county airports adopting a resolution authorizing application and agreements for acceptance of federal and state grant funds. Let me ask staff if they have any comments they would like to make on this item.
Chair, as it relates to this particular item, every year we come before the board to receive authority to seek federal and state grant funds for our 8 airports. And we do not have a presentation on this item.
Great, thank you. We do not have any requests for comment on this item from the public. Let me go first to Supervisor Anderson.
I didn't mean to put staff through hoops. I had a simple question, and I probably could have done it in consent, but I'm not that comfortable yet on the board here to just wheel and deal on that. But we come back every year with this. I was wondering, why can't we amend it so that they don't need to come back to us? What's the rationale of why we keep doing this? It seems to me that it only makes sense that they chase down all the monies available to do the things necessary. Is it appropriate for us to change this to perhaps a 2-year process or even a process in perpetuity?
Chair Fletcher, Supervisor Anderson, we very much appreciate you bringing this up for consideration by the board. We would be very supportive of if we could extend it to have the authority for 2 years, because that very much aligns with our strategic plan and how we update the various projects that may need funding to bring back to your board for consideration. So we would absolutely support the board's consideration of making this a 2-year authority for us to go after funds.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that as a motion, if I may.
All right, happy to second that. We have that as a motion from Supervisor Anderson, seconded by myself. Let me ask my colleagues if there's any other comments or questions. All right, not hearing any. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
That concludes the business before the board today. We'll now proceed to adjourn in memories. We have 2 adjournments in memory. I would like to adjourn today's meeting in honor of San Diego Police Department homicide detectives Ryan Park and Jamie Huntley Park. This married couple suffered a tremendous tragedy, and our hearts are heavy because of the loss of life of these 2 extraordinary individuals. These young detectives had their entire life in front of them. They had lived a life of service and commitment to our community, and they were taken from us too soon. They trained their entire careers to protect and serve, and last Friday they lost their lives because of a traffic accident involving a wrong-way driver on the 5 freeway. And the lives that have been lost unnecessarily are a tremendous tragedy and a reminder of the importance of service. Ryan Park was a homicide detective. His spouse, Jamie Huntley Park, also a homicide detective. She was raised in San Diego, was an alum of La Jolla High School. Jamie was a coach of the San Diego Angel Girls Ice Hockey Club and was a professional referee, hoping to referee in the Olympics. Jamie and Ryan's bond developed when they met at the police academy. 4 years later, they were married. In 2018, they became detectives again on the same day. We lost 2 individuals in our community who had given everything to us throughout their professional life, and it is appropriate and fitting that we adjourn today's meeting in honor and memory of Ryan Park and Jamie Huntley Park. I would also like to adjourn today's Board of Supervisors meeting in honor of the life of Stephen Liu. Many of us knew Stephen from his time at the City of San Diego, where he served as Director of Community Outreach and Business Development for former Mayor Jerry Sanders. During his 8 years of service at the city, Stephen oversaw the mayor's community outreach efforts in, at that time, 8 council districts and was the official liaison to the AAPI community. Stephen also helped spearhead Mayor Sanders' initiative to make San Diego the craft beer capital of America, working with the brewing community on initiatives that would enable what was then a very young industry to grow and thrive. His success on that front is evident across our region today. In 2012, Stephen took over his family's real estate business, S. Liu and Associates, and served as the company's president until his passing last month, but he remained very active and very involved in our community. Over the years, Stephen was keen on giving back to the community that had given him so much. He served on the director of the boards of the Downtown San Diego Partnership, the Pacific Arts Movement, the San Diego Asian Business Association, the Balboa Park Conservancy, and most recently, the UCSD Urban Studies and Planning Department's Real Estate and Development Advisory Board. Stephen had recently become a father to a baby girl named Chloe. Although he enjoyed doing many things, spending time with his family, with his spouse Jennifer and their daughter Chloe was at the forefront of what they did. It was a tragic and terrible loss, and our deepest condolences go out not just to his spouse and his baby, but in particular his parents who have endured tremendous hardship. And so we adjourn our meeting today in Stephen Liu's honor. With that, we will go to Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And I guess in the spirit of adjournments, just briefly, I wanted to mention, my brother, John Patrick Desmond, he passed away in February at age 76 of pancreatic cancer. And I'm going to be attending his celebration of life June 14th to the 17th. And I will be missing, I think there's board deliberations on the June 14th and 17th, but I'll be out of town at my brother's celebration of life. So thank you very much.
We're very sorry for your loss, Supervisor Desmond. With that, that concludes the business before the board. We stand adjourned.
The next meeting of the board will begin the budget hearing process, which will begin on Monday, June 14th, 2021 at 9 a.m. when the board will receive a presentation on the fiscal years 2021 through 23 recommended operational plan and receive public testimony on all areas of the budget. A second budget hearing is also scheduled for Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m.